evening, everyone, and welcome to the City of Muskegon City Commission meeting for October 12th, 2021. Before we begin the proceedings, I'd like to welcome up Pastor Tara Foreman from Bethany Church to lead us in prayer. Please join us if you so wish, and that will be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Pastor?
Let us pray. God, thank you for this incredible city that we call home, for the gift of natural resources, our lakes, beaches, dunes, and parks, for the land itself and its earliest known caretakers, the Ottawa and Potawatomi tribes. Thank you for the diverse culture and people represented in our city, for the variety of voices and perspectives, for the neighbors and leaders who choose to engage in our organizations, our institutions, schools, businesses, restaurants, neighborhood associations, and community events. Thank you for all who make Muskegon home. Thank you for our children. May we teach them to be good citizens and provide them with a city they are proud to call their own. Thank you for these city leaders here tonight. Give them wisdom as they make decisions and consider outcomes in often complex situations. Help them to be good stewards of our resources. Help them to find joy in the work, hope for a prosperous and peaceful future, and care, concern, and provision for our most vulnerable. In the name of the Holy One, to whom we pray, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Pastor. May we have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Ramsey?
Here.
Commissioner German?
Here.
Commissioner Rinsma-Sipiga?
Here.
Commissioner Emery?
Here.
Commissioner Johnson?
Here.
Mayor Gallren?
Here.
Vice Mayor Hood?
Here.
Thank you. At this time, we'd like to offer the opportunity for public comment from any of our audience. Public comment at this time is limited to any item that is on the agenda. Public comment on any other topic is held at the end of the meeting. Are there any community members that would like to address the commission at this time on any one of the agenda items?
Michael Hall is 903 Turner Avenue, Muskegon, Michigan. Evening, Mayor, Commissioners.
Good evening, sir.
And
what item?
Item D.
Okay.
I'm looking at these figures, and I'm wondering if you're going to even be able to close the gap on this from the difference of what they want to do and what we budgeted. So I'm just curious whether you think we're going to be able to get there or not, because I love seeing our parks getting rebuilt.
Absolutely.
All right. Have a great night.
Thank you kindly. Are there any other members of the community that would like to bring up any of the agenda items? If not, we move on to consent agenda. Commissioners, you've received the consent agenda and have had an opportunity to review the items. Are there any items you wish to have removed for further discussion? Commissioner Emery?
Item E.
Any other ones, Commissioners? If not, Commissioner Johnson?
If there are no others, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented, minus item E.
Support. It's been moved by Commissioner Johnson, seconded by Commissioner German, to approve the consent agenda as presented, minus item E. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Rinsma-Sipiga?
Yes.
Commissioner Emery?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Mayor Gallren?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hood?
Yes.
Commissioner Ramsey?
Yes.
Commissioner German?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Item E, Commissioner Emery.
I move to approve the operating agreement and authorize the city manager to sign.
Support.
It's been moved by Commissioner Emery, supported by Commissioner Rinsma-Sipiga, to approve the operating agreement and authorize the city manager to sign. Commissioner Emery.
Yes. Again, like I said last night, under recitals, G and H, I would like removed from that the sidewalks because it looks like it's okay to ride them on the sidewalk. And I had talked to our fill-in attorney earlier. He said it was yes, that it can be removed.
If they agree to, yeah,
Yeah.
sure. Okay. Sure, it's, the overriding agreement says you have to comply with all laws, and our ordinance provides you can't ride your motorcycle on the sidewalk or scooter. And so it seems to me that in both those recitals, that word should come out.
Okay. So that will be removed.
I'll follow up on that.
So should I change my motion?
Could you change the motion then to indicate the removal of
Yeah,
sidewalk?
I would do an amendment. Amend your motion
Okay.
to remove sidewalk from both recital G and recital H.
Okay, I would like to amend my motion to remove sidewalk, the word sidewalk under the recitals G and H.
Support.
Is it
Oh.
that's separate from the
The original.
underlying or the?
We could just
separate
use
from-
it as a friendly amendment.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So it has been moved by Commissioner Emery, second by Commissioner German to remove, this is on the amendment, the term sidewalk out of recitals G and H. Any discussion on the amended? Commissioner?
So we discussed it somewhat last night. Deputy Manager Mike, so you were there, right?
Mhm.
Do you have any major concerns about that at this time?
The only thing that comes to my mind is where we're going to end up having the scooters parked temporarily. And if we take sidewalks out, that just removes one of our options. Because I thought there was discussion last night that we may have wide sidewalks or like toward an intersection where there's like a triangle that isn't really for parking, that those could be places to park the scooters. So if we remove sidewalks, then one of those options goes away. That's the only thought I had.
Because I read it as that you can operate them on the sidewalks. So how would we word it to keep what you're saying and yet not read it as if it's you can legally operate on the sidewalk?
We can fix the language
Okay.
to match what both of you want. So it's if you're okay with parking on the sidewalk,
Yeah.
but not riding on the sidewalk, we can make that work.
Right,
For
you
sure.
know, sidewalks allowing for access for parking and storage.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like you can drive over the sidewalk, but you can't drive on the sidewalk, a car.
Mm-hmm.
But
So
they can make that stipulation.
We can make that work. Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, Commissioner Johnson?
Yeah, kind of in the same vein, because you mentioned where they're going to be located, and that remains to be seen. So I'm wondering if we were to hammer that out and actually have that attachment F included when we adopt it. Like, I'm wondering what their timeline was for becoming operational. Like, were they planning on launching this, say, still before year end, like before winter, or is it going to be, springtime is when they actually are operationalizing this program?
I thought I heard springtime last night, but
Oh, here you are. Okay. So could we then, rather than agree now, hammer that language out, understand where the locations are going to be, and not only for, Commissioner Emery's concerns, but someone brought up to me this afternoon, and I hadn't thought of this before, so I didn't bring this up last night, is how this is going to interact with existing operators. So, for instance, we have a e-bike renter, in Lakeside, and understanding, where this is going to be located relative to their business, and they also had an agreement for renting at Pure Marquette. So, would this agreement as is preclude them from continuing to operate there? Because the last thing I think we'd want to do, and I'm not speaking for the commission, but the last thing I'd want to do is move forward with this and then jeopardize an existing business in Lakeside that is resident owned and minority owned, particularly given our goals this year. One of them was diversifying entrepreneurship in Lakeside. And so I don't know if any conversations have been had with that business, but I want to understand, like, how is this going to be located and potentially affect their business? Because I wouldn't want to push out or harm another business to the point of ceasing to exist.
Sure, we can maybe ask the attorney to check on that, but I read through the agreement and it sounded to me like there was provision that this doesn't preclude anybody else from operating a similar business in the same areas.
There is, well, I know that the general language is saying exclusive, but when you get into the nitty gritty, it does not say fully exclusive, just exclusive within 100 feet
Right.
of those locations, that they can't have competing. So I'd like to have understanding where those are actually going to be located, the stations, because that's not spelled out in this agreement, and that attachment's not here. So for my comfort level, I'd like to know where we're launching first, understanding if that business wants to maintain their operations at pre-market, may have that opportunity to do so, so they're not precluded from operating there.
Is there an option to give staff direction to make sure that we work with existing operators in selecting the locations and still get this done tonight, since we've put the effort in last night and we've got the owner here?
Yeah, because I think it's you were looking for the approval because you got to get all your.
We have to purchase, order, so it's a 3-month wait. So if we don't do it soon, then we get pushed out past spring.
Right.
That's kind of-
But we still have time, even if we do that or this tonight, to, again, it's to be determined, the placement of these stations and the like.
It is.
And again, making certain that this is not an encumbrance on any existing business.
Correct. And John has talked to our attorney as well. The intent of this operating agreement is not to push anybody out. In the language in it, it doesn't say anything about pushing anybody out. The exclusivity agreement is based around allowing us to use city property to park these. Anybody can operate a rental, anything like that. That doesn't limit, our contract doesn't limit anybody else from operating. It limits the ability to have them reserve space for their bikes or e-bikes or whatever else on the city property. So if somebody came in and they bought lots throughout the city, they can park their own bikes on that lot. We can't exclude them from operating in the city. So it's just to use city property for parking.
Yeah, for your stations. Yeah. What I'm wondering about is how that interplays with Pure Marquette Park, because we have a concessionaire's agreement with a e-bike rental company already operating on city property, and so I just want to understand the interplay between those, and that we're not necessarily pushing them out from there to accommodate this new agreement.
Okay. So we would not be with existing agreements, not jeopardizing their ongoing.
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Commissioner Ehrman?
He answered it.
Okay. Good. Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I just want to get this clear. When you're saying that to have exclusive rights to park your scooters on city property, that's not saying that if someone else say they're renting e-bikes, that they can't park theirs on city property.
There wouldn't be city property reserved for somebody else to come in and save a space to operate another competing business. That's the purpose of the operating agreement, because again, when we're trying to invest, $100,000 just on scooters plus operating costs and everything else, we don't want Lime to come in and say, okay, we're going to operate the same area and we're just going to get pulled over. You have 500 scooters out there and 70 lines.
So
That's the purpose. So to have, I think Frank mentioned at the end of some of your parking spots, this little triangular space. I think there's 4 or 5 right downtown. Those are the spaces we were looking at.
Excuse me, Mayor.
Any of that.
Mayor, could we have him come to the podium? 'Cause we
I'm
can't hear
sorry.
him.
Yeah, we're not a work session.
Yeah.
Yeah,
please.
Terry, if you
Thank
please.
yeah, because where I guess maybe I'm just a little confused. is that you're saying that whatever, if there's another company that's renting e-bikes, we'll say, then you're saying your agreement says that they have to own the property, has to be private property that they park on, but they couldn't park on city property.
Or any other property that they could get an agreement with. This exclusivity was built for the local firm so that some of these big dogs out there from, the west or the east coast, couldn't swoop in and.
So to answer that question, I still haven't got a clear answer.
Mhm.
So again, the city on this agreement specifically, and John, correct me if I'm wrong, whatever spaces we dedicate with you guys as a partnership, saying that this space is dedicated for our scooters, the city cannot enter in an alternate agreement to have alternate space that's dedicated for somebody else's scooters. That's the purpose of the agreement, is to protect us from being bowled out by other larger companies.
So all city property,
City of Muskegon,
Muskegon's property
correct. City of Muskegon,
that the city owns,
correct.
another competing or another company can't park on that property.
Permanently parked.
So when you say permanently parked, you're talking about a substation or a station that has a charging dock and all of that stuff. You're not just talking about parking a bike.
It could
You're
be a
saying they
charging
can't set
dock.
up shop next to you.
Correct.
No, I understand that part.
Yeah.
And so next to you would be the whole city that the city owns, city property city owns.
City property, yeah. Parking spaces, sidewalks, as we discussed, would be a possibility of a parking space. So, if somebody came in and they purchased property, rented property from private owners, we obviously can't do anything about that. They're going to continue to operate. But being a partnership with the city of Muskegon, that's the purpose, is we want to have an exclusive partnership with you guys for parking spaces for our.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Commissioner Emery?
Throughout the whole city or just the downtown area? Because I know you talked about mostly getting traffic around the downtown area.
Yep. So obviously, with our 10-year agreement, initially our goal is to grow. I mean, we were talking about down Pine Street and 3rd Street to go Midtown. So when we say City of Muskegon, I assume it would be the entire City of Muskegon would be protected by that agreement. Because again, our plan is not to just stay downtown. It's to get B2B, B2C, getting people e-bikes to go to work and back. That would include the city.
Vice Mayor, follow up.
Yeah, just follow up with Commissioner Emery was saying, and to my question again. So if you say we don't get to the Apple Street, the Pine Streets, the Wood Streets, then nobody else can service those areas either, doing the same thing and park on city property.
Correct. If you're trying to dedicate, we would have first right of refusal. You came to us and said, we need bikes over here, and we said, we don't want to do it, there's first right of refusal on that. If we say we can't do it and we don't want to do it, then there should be an ability to do so. John, correct me if I'm wrong.
Do that.
Commissioner Emery.
Okay, I'm not liking that. I am from the Lakeside neighborhood, and it is one of our businesses in Lakeside that do rent out e-bikes and have a summer location out at the beach.
Sure.
And you're saying that they couldn't expand their own business. They've been in existence for 5 years, I think. So by what you're saying, with that exclusiveness, they wouldn't be able to expand their business any further than what they've already gotten it.
It wouldn't affect current agreements.
So if it doesn't affect current agreements and they wanted to set up a site downtown, they could.
And Jen, obviously this is more of a question for you. How does that play out on the agreement?
Well, I didn't see the right of first refusal in here anywhere. Could you point out where that is?
I don't have it in front of me, I'm sorry.
What I see is the designated parking zone is a space located and specifically identified by the city for parking.
Correct.
And so the city's going to pick where those spots are going to be.
Yeah, it's not our decision.
Initially, they're going to pick. And so the city will control the location of these spots. After that, if there's something in here about a right of first refusal, I haven't seen that.
Okay. I know it was in one of the agreements initially, and I know we went back and forth for several months on it. So maybe that was cut out at some point, but there certainly was a first right of refusal to where we would have the ability to, if you guys say, hey, we have a need for these bikes here, we would have the first right of refusal to say, yeah, I'm sorry, we can't fill that gap.
And I haven't seen that.
Okay.
But I'm coming in late, so I'll have to talk to John about that tomorrow.
Yep.
Yeah, Commissioner Johnson?
Oh, just to jump on that first refuse, I just queried the document, the PDF, and I don't see any reference to a clause, and I didn't notice it when I skimmed it over previously, so it didn't make the final cut if it was in there in some draft, first right of refusal. Speaking of, for existing agreements wouldn't be upended, let's keep in mind, though, that concessionaire's agreement with that company at Pierre Marquette goes year to year. So the agreement's done for this season. So they're not necessarily protected. That's why I want to make sure that we have some kind of assurances that if we move forward with this, they're not going to be iced out from being able to move forward with their operations as they have in years past. And so that's just why I'd like to have some more comfort level as we move forward with this, because I think this is what you're doing here is wonderful, creating greater modes of mobility. And I love the connection to trying to, not only for tourists, but residents getting to and from work. That's awesome. If I may change gear quickly, could you, because I didn't get to ask this last night.
Sure.
It was mentioned, but I didn't get to dig into it, but I'm wondering, what are the parameters for your annual subsidized pass? Like, who would qualify for that subsidized pass?
We have not set those yet. So again, first option is getting this agreement signed. Then we start digging into the nuts and bolts of the IoT system, and then we start setting those parameters as we go. So we don't know yet.
Do you have a general idea or how you're approaching that? Like, who would potentially qualify for the subsidized pass?
So I have a booklet that kind of goes by what has been successful through a company called Joyride that Steve talked about a little bit. That's what we're kind of basing everything off of. So I have those numbers. I have everything I need, but I haven't dug into that yet.
Okay. Has there ever been any consideration?
Oh, no, go ahead.
I was just wondering, it dawned on me today upon further review of this that we're making use of all of our right-of-ways and city properties for this with exclusivity attached to it for free. There's no charge to it. There's no expense to it. So I was wondering, in terms of the annual subsidized pass, has there been consideration of making that pass available for city residents, since we are using their property? I mean, they own all of this infrastructure, all the right-of-ways. So if we were to tie that in and say residents get that subsidized pass or can avail themselves of that subsidized pass as a trade-off to, hey, we're making all of these right-of-ways available for free.
Yep. So I've talked to Frank several different times about doing either certain passes, coupon codes, specifically for people going back and forth to work on phase 2. So all those things have been discussed, but again, without a contract to move forward, we haven't dug into that. That's top level stuff, which we haven't done that yet. So.
Commissioner Ramsey, did you have your pen up at one time?
I did, but then I spoke out of turn, as I tend to do, and got my question answered.
Very good. Commissioner Emery.
Oh, I couldn't see our attorney there.
I know.
So let me understand. We didn't find a right of refusal, correct?
I haven't seen it.
Okay.
John's the one who negotiated this. I'll talk with John tomorrow.
Okay, so Mike, what I'm now concerned about the bicycle shop in my neighborhood and how it will affect them from expanding. You know, right now they're located in Lakeside, and last year they were out at the beach, but I haven't talked to them, so I don't know if they have a future vision of being downtown or elsewhere in our city. So how would this agreement affect them? Would it stop them from being able to expand?
There's nothing in this agreement that would stop them.
Okay.
The city will control the locations,
Okay.
and we just have to check and make sure the right of first refusal is not in there.
Okay.
And then the city will totally control the locations. If the right of refusal is in here, and I just didn't see it, that gives the developer much more power, so to speak. He can say no
Right.
anytime he wants.
Right.
But I don't see it. If it's
Yeah, I
in
looked
here.
through it either, and I don't.
Yeah, so I don't think it's in here.
Yeah.
But so the city will control this, and to protect other businesses, we just have to be smart about how we place these locations.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Vice Mayor.
When you say the city will control it without the first right of refusal being in there, so other companies could come in and operate on a city property.
Yes, but not on his spots.
But
He controls his.
so
Once you
we'll
agree
have
to the spots, it's his
specific spots, though, right?
Right.
And it just wouldn't be a blanket over the
Right.
city-owned property.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
The
Yes.
way I read it or understand it is they can't operate within 100 feet. So any of the designated parking areas for his business, no other competitors could come in and operate within 100 feet of that designated area.
Thank you.
Well, we have the amendment at this point to deal with the striking of sidewalks. So shall we take a vote on that one now, and if there's additional on the underlying motion, we can go further with that. So, yes, Vice Mayor.
So can you repeat the motion before we continue?
Right, the motion was to amend the agreement striking sidewalk from recitals G and H.
Yep.
Okay. Roll call, please. Oh, I'm sorry.
I guess I thought, I'm a little confused because legal counsel said we'd be able to figure out a way to square what Commissioner Emery wants to do and what staff's expectations were, and striking it does not square that or create that latitude that we're looking. So I'm just trying to understand how we're proceeding. Like, I know there's a motion, we need to address that motion, but I don't want to. I mean, because I imagine most of these parking locations or stations are going to be a number of them potentially on sidewalks, or
They could be. I guess I wouldn't want to lose that option.
okay. How far along were your conversations about the locations? Do you have preliminary maps or preliminary spots? Like, I would really like to hear, like, how far are you along in that process of selecting your locations and these designated parking areas?
So we're not far at all in selecting locations. That all's got to go through Frank at this point. So yeah, we've discussed just that triangle at the end of every run of parking. Beyond that, we haven't sat down and gone over spots yet.
Okay. So
That's all up in the air.
in terms of process, we could move forward with this as is and amend it later, adding back in appropriate language to access sidewalks if needed for parking areas. How does Deputy Manager Mike Sell you? I mean,
Sure. Yeah, that's fine.
that's works for you. Okay.
Commissioner Ramsey.
Yeah, I just want to clarify Commissioner Emery's concern. Her concern was having them operated on the sidewalk, so I don't have to jump out of the way for some 14-year-old kid trying to run me over on a little scooter. That part I get, but if there's a substation parked on the sidewalk that has the room for that, that is not an issue for me. Is that an issue for you, Commissioner Emery? So then just removing the operationalization of them on a sidewalk is what you're concerned about.
Yes.
So then I don't think that striking sidewalks from either of those recitals says to me, as reading the contract, that we can't have a station on there for charging.
Right.
So I don't know if there's any further squaring that needs to be done, but I could be confused.
Well, they're talking about having it on the sidewalk, and you're getting from the sidewalk to the road. You're going to be traversing a sidewalk.
Well, you can traverse the sidewalk, but I can't drive my truck on it.
That's what they're saying.
I said.
And just,
I'm saying it doesn't seem unclear to me what you were asking for and what the contract says. And we know that if we see someone on one that's on the sidewalk, we just run and push them over.
Or get a ticket, which
Yeah.
they would, because they can't do it.
So my only point is that I don't know that we need to square it off any further, because with what Commissioner Emery has said, it seems pretty well laid out that they're not to be driven on the sidewalk. But if you have a station for charging, that's not being driven.
So,
Go ahead, Commissioner Johnson.
staff's concern was though that would preclude them from having those parking stations on the sidewalk if we remove it. So
Yeah,
that's
and
where
I'm saying that it doesn't sound like it would, because we're talking about operation, not parking.
Well, staff is. Oh, I'm sorry.
Commissioner German?
Yeah, and if I heard correctly, legal counsel did say he would add the language in there, squaring or clearing anything up dealing with the sidewalk and parking and operation, not physically operating on sidewalks. So once that's that language is added, that should pretty much clear up any discretions or anything, I would think.
Yeah, we can make it clear that there's no operating on sidewalks allowed, yet we can put the parking on the sidewalks.
Okay.
So maybe we need to amend the amendment to say that.
Yeah.
Make
Yeah.
everybody clear.
Look at us squaring it away.
Yeah, yeah. And also, just one last question. Okay, and you said there's no designated location or map for the parking right now. So, but this contract would be, how long is the contract that we're looking at? 10, did it say 10 years? I'm reading that. Okay, that's a long time. So now, how many?
it's 10 years.
10 years.
Or 5-year renewals for a total of 30 years.
So you want to be locked into a 10-year contract with the city when it comes to parking. Okay. And you said there was also in the original contract, which we don't see, a right of refusal for parking. That's something that's, you said that was in the actual contract, correct?
We're not seeing it.
No, we're not seeing it exactly, but
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
just, I'm reiterating basically what was stated by you, sir. Okay, so, and approximately we're looking at, starting out, you say about 100?
100, correct. Yep,
I don't know, how many scooters are we looking at?
100 initially.
Oh, just 100 initially.
Correct, yep.
Okay. And they will actually be in certain areas. Now, Vice Mayor also said something about certain areas, and the Wood Street area, maybe Nelson area, are those areas that you looked at, or will they be able to actually utilize the service with
So,
those scooters, which is, an area which is somewhat, a higher level of crime.
Mhm.
So, I mean, for safety issues or theft and stuff like that, are you considering that?
so the point of phase one with the 100 scooters, they're going to try to stay downtown, within
Okay.
several blocks of downtown. They're going to frequent businesses. So when we get to phase two, that's where we're going to kind of open it up a little bit based on whatever you guys are looking for, to where that's going to allow people to get to work with e-bikes. So there's all sorts of different things that we can purchase for the business, for the city, to travel back and forth to work, travel to shop, wherever. So again, phase one is quite literally going to be downtown, leading down the bike trail out to Lake Michigan. So that's going to be the runway for all these current 100. Next year, we'll probably add another 100, see how that's going, and then expand the layout.
Okay. And just one last thing, because now, and following and being in line also with the mission and vision for the city of Muskegon, we're inclusive and, organization, government. And I really don't want to see anyone excluded or any neighborhood not have an opportunity, to your services. So that's a concern. So that's the reason for my questions.
Yep, yeah, I think the only thing that we have to worry about, and I'm sure you can agree, is if we have the entire city of Muskegon with scooters, bikes, or whatever, we do have to create some sort of geofence to stop them from going, all the way across town where there's really no stores, nothing. I mean, we will increase theft, we'll increase all sorts of different issues. So we do want to limit them in some capacity. So I was trying to keep them away from full residential areas, at least in phase one and possibly phase two.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Ramsey and then Vice Mayor.
Yeah, I just have a quick question, and I don't want to put Director Ekholm on the line, but Jake, would our AI Pacer program help us in the future to determine where would be some good places that are not in the downtown corridor to have substations set up for this opportunity?
It would depend on what you were targeting as an area that would be viable. But I already have points of interest developed for the Getty corridor, the Lakeside district. So I can tell you how many people go through. Within even a single day period, anywhere from 3 days ago back to 2017. So I can give you data as to who's traversing an area. I can look at a single parcel and determine, okay, how many people are coming to this business in the last 6 months. So if that's something that would be valuable in helping the commission and the administration determine where we should put these, then certainly we can do that. It can't track for you who's using them or where they're going,
right?
Because it doesn't discriminate between.
Well, right.
But yeah, if you want to target it based on retail activity or based on commuter activity, things like that, then yeah, we can help with that.
I think that's great. And then my follow-up question is, when Terry's talking about phase 3, and we're looking at actually providing easy, streamlined transportation for those who work in the community, like myself, and who walk to work or bike to work already, would our Pacer platform help with defining areas for those bikes to go into specifically?
That's probably a heavier lift.
Okay.
I don't see it being effective.
Okay.
Because, there's no way to those on foot or bike commuters are and where they're coming from. Software doesn't distinguish that way. It only looks at travel patterns in mass. So I don't think it could be particularly useful in that way. I think we would need some background data that could not be achieved with Placer.
Okay.
Is there a cohort of people heading, as an example, to the Port City Industrial Park for them, for their daily commute, and if so, how many? But I don't think we can achieve that.
So then Terry's just going to go door to door in all of Muskegon County and ask if they would ride an e-bike. That's great. I love that. Of
course.
Yeah. I think that this sounds like a great opportunity for our city. And as Commissioner German was speaking to, the need for something like this, because we have a huge deficit when it comes to transportation, especially when you talk about work. And while riding a little scooter up and down Western Avenue is fun, if there's a way to build something out so that it actually provides better services to our community, I'm behind it 100%. So those things are important to me.
Yeah, that's the goal.
This is a great place to start.
Okay. Vice Mayor.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I like the idea. Because I seen them in Grand Rapids, and I thought it was a good idea. My only hang up is, it says here, the operating agreement ensures that Ride Muskegon LLC and its customers follow the rules and regulations as assigned by the City of Muskegon, and also ensures that the City of Muskegon will not rent similar space to new competitor companies during the operating period. So that would say, to me, is that if anybody else comes in and wanted to do something similar, they can't do it on city property no matter where it's at. They can't park them on city property no matter where it's at. And he's already said that phase 1 and phase 2, they're not really looking at going into residential areas. So what happens to those areas? That's my question. I think Jake has an answer.
Jake.
Come on up.
Please do. Thank you.
So, just having done recent research on this industry, there's a couple points to make here regarding both the exclusivity by company and community, and then also whether or not to integrate them into primarily residential areas. So, most of the places where there's good data or publication are larger metro areas, just as a caveat, bigger cities. So there's folks that have run into some policy-oriented problems. Cities that have not restricted which companies will operate, they just have passed an ordinance, and then folks can simply get staff approval through permitting processes like you would for other businesses. And they'll have 7+ companies operating, and then a large influx of the actual scooters. That causes more traffic congestion, more potential accidents, potential safety hazards, and then obviously the streets are just littered with the scooters. It's a problem for some of these larger metro areas that haven't pursued, at least, if not exclusivity. I'm not necessarily advocating for that. What I am saying is, most cities that have placed a limitation on the number of franchises that they'll allow have had better success with integrating these modes of transportation into their transit system. The second thing is where you see a lot of complaints in those metro areas is when those scooters get outside of commercial districts or multifamily styled mixed use districts with commercial and residential into primarily residential districts of cities, because they end up getting left in people's lawns, they end up getting left in parks where kids get a hold of them, and whether they turn them on or not, they play with them, and or they end up getting leaned up against somebody's fence, so on and so forth. So keeping them out of primarily residential areas is not necessarily such a bad idea. If there's a specific need for commuter-oriented transit with these scooters that has to point A in residential areas, I would argue that we don't necessarily have data that supports or denies that. We don't know. I will tell you that our current transit system, the bus system here with MATS, is primarily a service-oriented system, not a commuter transit system. It's not primarily used for people to get to work. It's primarily used for people to get to services. There's good data that supports that. So the big thing is, as far as concerns with residential areas, I don't really know if we need those scooters in those residential areas for people to get to and from work or not. I think bicycles and other modes are relatively affordable and are also prevalent in our community, but it's not really a question we can answer from a data-driven standpoint. So it really becomes a policy question as to whether or not you think it's a good idea as a commission for them to be in residential areas. I think as of now, the company is proposing that they not go in primarily residential areas, which I think the staff has concurred with just because of the lack of data.
Vice Mayor?
Okay, that's wonderful, Jake. I mean, thank you for that information. But my thing, so this is basically a downtown thing.
Phase one.
Phase one. And probably phase two is just maybe a little bit outside, hitting the beginning of Nelson neighborhood, probably.
Phase two is going to be more of the people to get to work. So if there's people that live outside, a little bit further outside the city, they would want to bring an e-bike. Or let's say they do work here in the city. They would ought to bring it to the most furthest point they can. So
Okay.
just to get a little bit further. The e-bikes are what's going to give us the distance. Scooters are not going to give us the distance.
So why would we need the exclusivity?
Sorry, say again.
Why would we need it to be exclusive city parking for the one company?
I mean, I think they explained it a couple of times. I mean, they're going
I
to
didn't
invest.
understand it. They explained it. It wasn't explained good enough.
He said they're going to invest. I think he said last night over $200,000. He said what I heard tonight was $100,000 in equipment, and then there's the whole app development, getting the maintenance ready, all that kind of stuff. So it's an expensive endeavor to have 100 scooters. So I mean, it's you can't fly before you walk. So I think the idea is you have to get this going before you can, and if they don't have at least some time frame to try that out. At this point, from what I understand, staff has pursued this and hasn't found anybody that's willing to do it. But as soon as it's up and running, there are possibilities that other companies, and mostly we're talking about larger companies who can afford to drop $200,000 or $500,000, will see it as an opportunity, and then it will be very difficult for them to get beyond that phase. So what I understand is we have to, in order to get something going, we have to put something out there that they can test out, see how it works. I think all of this is things that we don't quite understand. I mean, some folks have seen what happens in other cities, but we're gonna have to figure out some of the details here. So,
And Mr. Ekholm.
Yeah, I want to clarify a point that I made earlier regarding the exclusivity, and then again the argument from the business side of things. So I think the business is proposing that exclusivity agreement because of that fact, and I think Mr. Puffer mentioned it earlier. So think about a mom and pop grocery store versus a Walmart. If that mom and pop grocery store had a franchise agreement within the community they were in, saying we're the only grocery store that can be within this geographic area, Walmart can't come in and they can't get steamrolled, because the large companies, own either rights or outright own companies that do this scooter and e-bike program, including Lyft and Uber, the rideshare companies. So if they decide this is a market they want into, local companies likely would not be able to compete. And so I think that's their reasoning behind the request for the exclusivity. I think from a policy standpoint, trying to give you the pluses and minuses, the pluses for the exclusivity agreement are, again, as I said, just controlling the inflow of the actual machinery and the actual pieces of equipment to ensure that we don't let it get out of hand like some of the larger municipalities have that now deal with problems, congestion problems, safety problems. The downside to the exclusivity is maybe there's a large demand and we can't meet growth and we have one company we can work with for it. So from a neutral policy standpoint, I think that's the reason they're asking, and that's why it probably makes sense for us to consider it, but that's the pluses and minuses to it. Does that help clarify the request?
Well, not really. I mean, I figured that out before you said it. I figured that out before I came tonight, but I'm just wondering, I'm just looking at this and I'm listening, and it's just it's a gray area in there of what exactly we're doing when it comes to being exclusive to this first right of refusal, which is not there.
No, the first right of refusal does not exist. I've been looking at past questions and notifications, so we can say that it does not exist. One issue here with this type of exclusive agreement, I think part of it is non-neutral, is that we have, a local resident, attempting to set up something that we'd like to see, and giving the local Muskegonite an opportunity not to be impinged on by some of these
Excuse me,
large national companies.
Can I say something right quick?
Yeah.
When we see, now we're back on local resident again. Let's get that local resident the chance. And I'm not, and nothing against you, because I want to see your business work. But not too long ago, when we were talking about, I think, is it the GO? We're talking about the transportation, and we had to vote on whether we wanted to be involved in that.
Oh, for Matt's in the county. Mm-hmm.
There was one local company that applied for that. It met the standards, but the questions, I guess, the bigger out-of-state company had more ride share than he did.
Mm-hmm.
But we weren't talking about the local person at that time, which had happened to be a minority. But now we're talking about the local person. Let's get that local guy a chance. And I'm all for that. I am. And I'm going to vote yes for this. But I just had to say what I had to say.
Sure.
Right.
Question there.
Yes.
So let me ask Vice Mayor. Okay. First of all, and I hear what you're saying too, because it sounds hypocritical. If I was somebody, who didn't know, and when we make rules and they change them for different situations, and you see this all the time. And like I said, nothing against the gentleman right there. Now, but part with the parking also, and city-owned property, is it that it seems that like with the all the rights to these parkings and where others can't set up or be within 100 feet of this. It seems like it's almost that this company will monopolize that areas, and if I follow you, that's kind of what it looks like to me. And looking at it, that's a concern also. Um, Now, within a 10-year period, that could happen. If you ask me, if we allow this to be a contract for 10 years, that gives this company opportunity and every advantage to do that. That's a concern. That's not good. So what do we do to see that that doesn't happen? That's my question.
So I've got a comment. So in the contract, there is a portion that says if there's something that we're not doing correctly, you guys would report that to us and we would have 30 days to fix whatever that issue is. Otherwise, you guys can terminate the contract.
Okay, what is that item? What item is that under?
Even as this is written, I believe that, another entity
Breach
could come
by
in
operator. Breach by operator, section XH. Or no, sorry, 12. Can't see very clearly.
What was that again, Commissioner Anderson?
Section 12, termination. Breach by operator. The Muskegon may terminate its participation in this agreement by giving 30 days notice.
Okay,
It's page 10 of the
yeah.
agreement.
All right. But, people, another entity or an individual that wanted to set up a business could rent similar space from other entities, including bars, restaurants, hotels, industrial businesses, just not on the agreed to city properties. And they could be within 100 feet even, but they would have to look for that other lease possibility or rental possibility for land. Making arrangements to have their bikes or scooters stored and dropped off, let's say at the Delta Community College, but just not upon the agreed upon city properties.
Right. So if they wanted to make a contract to say if this gentleman X scooter business X comes in a month later and says, okay, I want to set up a 10-year contract with the city of Muskegon. You can't do that.
No, this would be exclusive,
See,
but
that's what I'm saying.
but the opportunities are there with any other property owners or agencies that they could enter an agreement with. Like I said, with
That's not a fair opportunity, Mayor.
I
don't think that's a fair opportunity if the refusal rights or exclusive rights or whatever. I hear what's going on, and I can follow what Vice Mayor was saying, and that's why I was listening. It does give opportunity to basically monopolize a city with that business, and therefore I don't see a fair opportunity, equal opportunity for other businesses to come in. And I did see the non-discriminatory item in here. It talks about this, and Commissioner Emery brought that to my attention. But as a operational and business setup, it almost just eliminates all competition for having parking on city property. If you follow me correctly, I can't come in and X or Y can't come in and set up a contract with the city because of the agreement that's already set up with the city. So should there be limitations?
Sorry, I don't think that's true. I think this explains it. If you want me to comment.
Yeah, could you?
Yeah, sure. Commissioner?
Yes.
Couple things. The contract's a little lawyered written, I think, but if you look at the definition of designated parking zone, that's the magic words, and that is completely designated by the city. Of course, we're going to work with the developer and do that, but the city's going to control what a designated parking zone is. And in my conversations with John earlier, I understand that to be just a few. It's not the whole downtown area. It's just a few parking areas.
Excuse me, legal counsel, which page is that on?
That's on page 2, definitions.
Okay, two, okay.
Okay, so you look at that, and so once we have a designated parking zone, we now jump to page 9 of the contract, and it says that Muskegon, this is the exclusive part, Muskegon shall not permit a designated parking zone for a competitor to be located on city-controlled real property within 100 feet of a designated parking zone. So it's not exclusive for the whole city. You get a designated parking zone and a 100-foot radius around it.
Around it.
Around it. That's it.
Right. And that may be under what phase 1, but we're talking different phases. So phase 2 may expand. So is that's my question. So if you expand phase 2, then the region gets larger.
But the city controls that.
Okay, so yeah. Okay, so the city. So if the proposal is made to say, well, okay, I want to expand in Nelson area. Okay, city has the option to go ahead and allow that to happen.
Right.
So now we have an even larger region. The downtown, we have this Nelson area or the NIMS area. So and over a 10-year period, that's my concern. I'm quite sure as business grow, you want to see a rate of return in your investments. So therefore, you're going to invest more to accumulate more revenue and expand that business. I mean, it's just the principles of how things work. You're not just going to stay in a location downtown where you can have and reach other consumers out there.
But one docking station, 100 feet from one particular station is no more of a depth than my yard.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean the potential is a block away you can have a competitor.
But you can't park on city property.
Not on that within 100 feet of that city-owned property.
Okay.
A block away or more than 100 feet, you could.
As long as it's not agreed upon. Exactly.
Agreement with the city.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay. So it doesn't block out anybody. It's just these exclusionary zones. Not unlike what we had with you can't have your food wagon, within at one point 100 feet of the door of a brick and mortar, and then it was whittled down a bit. But it's just so that you don't have competitors right on top of.
And I understand it. I understand
but it does not exclude us, from entering into other agreements, per what council
for competitors.
And okay, and it could be downtown, Okay. Commissioner Emery.
Just to give a geographical vision of it, if you put one at the corner of Hackley Park, I could put one at the opposite corner of Hackley Park. Okay. Got it.
Mm-hmm. Good job. Support.
Commissioner Johnson.
And Mr. Pupper, is that your understanding as well from your side, so that we're all on the same page, that this agreement would allow the city to enter into another agreement if in the future, just so long as those facilities and equipment are not stationed within 100 feet of your stations?
Yeah, so that part I was not familiar with, so that's something that I got to talk to my partner about, because that's certainly, it might not be what we're looking for, unfortunately.
Okay. Then I got a couple questions for Jake, or Director Ekholm.
Give it my best shot.
You mentioned that your research and looking at other municipalities and how they operate these programs. As part of that, did you dig into those agreements? You reviewed those agreements that they had, or anything like that? Because I'm just wondering, do other municipalities provide their public property and right-of-ways freely to those companies, or do they charge any kind of fee or revenue sharing agreement or anything like that?
I have not gotten into the specific agreements from those metro areas. I've primarily been reading reports from local outlets that have responded to complaints, and then have watched some of their city council and city commission meetings discussing the issues. Mm-hmm. We haven't gotten that far into looking into the exclusivity issues and the clutter issues. The primary primary complaints that you hear at these city council meetings for, again, larger metro areas tend to be basically cluttering of streets, people leaving them places they're not supposed to, traffic complaints, they're not riding them where they're supposed to, and then safety concerns, people being reckless with them, things like that.
Yeah. And it sounds like their program is going to be really adept at handling some of those things, given that their mobile app and their IoT system.
Based on
that's squared away.
Based on what I've been able to ascertain, they're doing all the best practices that companies have come up with to try to mitigate these concerns.
Mm-hmm. I guess I'm just trying to understand the fee situation, because, like, for instance, the company that does the bike rentals, and we allow them at Pure Marquette, we charge them a fee for that, and then we expect a percentage of the gross revenues for that. And here's a competitor that we're allowing to operate in our city, to be determined exactly where, completely freely. And so it just seems like an unfair advantage for one over the other, and that's what I'm trying to understand. And then there's also opportunities for advertising revenue. They can sell advertising, and there's no pass-through to the city for that. So I'm just wondering, maybe there's an opportunity for some kind of pass-through for at least the advertising revenue. So there's shared benefit. Although I think adding greater modes of mobility is a benefit in of itself to our community. But in terms of using public assets and resources, having a shared benefit accruing to our coffers, so to speak. And then it'd be great if we could then earmark those dollars to only go towards our streets or infrastructure, because we all know that we have many, many, many millions of dollars that need to be invested in our roads. And so if we can say, hey, this is a program using our roads, and we're going to get some kind of revenue that's reasonable and fair, and have that go towards supporting the roads on which this program operates. That's just my thinking there. I'm okay by and large. I mean, I would like to know, I'd like to have some kind of advertising revenue split personally. The exclusivity within 100 feet, I'm comfortable with. I'd like to see that attachment F and where they're going to be located. I'd like to understand how this is going to impact our existing businesses, because yes, this is a local resident. I'm all about local entrepreneurship, supporting our residents in that regard. But we do also have a resident with a business that I don't want to put out of business because of this, and so that's my concern there.
I'm happy to have one of my staff reach out to that business and get feedback. I think if it's explained to them clearly and walk through the terms proposed, I think we can get reasonable feedback for that.
Yeah, it'd be great if we have some kind of engagement with them, because I heard from someone today who's rented. That's what it jogged my memory. They were like, "Oh, we rented their e-bikes. They were great, whatnot." And I was like, "Oh, well, we got this agreement that's on our agenda tonight." And then I started thinking, I was like, "Oh, they've got a concessionaires agreement at Pure Marquette, and like, how would this affect them?" And so got the wheels churning, and then
I see
got through that more deeply. But I don't know if City Hub Cycler, I know they do rentals, but I don't know if they do e-bikes. I mean, that's something else.
No, they just do fixed wheel bike. Yeah, they just do manual bikes. So one of the things that as I've been giving this some thought, and I want to specify for the sake of clarity, this hasn't been my item. I'm just up here stepping into the breach to try to help. So, for better or worse. So, I've been giving this a lot of thought. So I'm an avid user of the Lakeshore Trail, and more I've been seeing those e-bikes that are rented in Lakeside heading towards downtown and then coming back. And I see this as not necessarily a competition point, but potentially a convenience point where folks that are downtown who can't rent a bike in Lakeside can use those scooters and e-bikes to get to Lakeside on the trail from downtown. So having a similar amenity downtown to get folks out to the Lakeside district could be a big benefit to that district, the same way those folks are renting those bikes in Lakeside and coming downtown. So I do see some synergy there, some potential partnership, and I'm happy to have our staff reach out and see what's going on.
I do have a question from Commissioner Ramsey.
Yes, without throwing off the timeline for Mr. Puffer and his partners, with the information that we've learned tonight and that may just be realized by you about the exclusivity agreement, would it be in our best interest, in the interest of time, to have the contract reviewed again by our council to strike the sidewalks and look at that, and then have you and your team and council review the contract on your end. There could be questions about revenue share and things like that, but that obviously is not going to all be solved here tonight, and yet we continue to discuss. So, in an effort to save that, and maybe we can table this or add this to our next agenda, and that would give staff time to jump all over that. Whose project is this, Jake?
Primarily Frank's, I believe.
I see.
We just got back in.
I see.
Stuck in the back.
Yeah. So yeah, but I think that there's a lot of valid conversation going on here, and it started with sidewalks, which we got to straight away, and now it's developed into these other things. So I think that everybody needs time to review, and Frank can be that point person to work with Mr. Carpenter's colleagues directly, and we can have it on our next agenda. So whatever that motion is, I make it.
Or I take that as a motion to table.
Yes.
Yes.
We have a
Until
motion
the
to
26th.
table by Commissioner Ramsey, seconded by Commissioner Johnson. There's no discussion. Roll call, please.
Mayor Galvin,
No.
Vice Mayor Hood,
No on the table.
Commissioner Ramsey,
Yes.
Commissioner German,
Say no.
Commissioner Pacifica,
Yes.
Commissioner Emery,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Puffer. Thanks, Jake.
Gives you some time to
Thank you.
whatever you
Figured out.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to new business. Item A. Can we have this read out, please?
West Urban Properties Pilot Agreement Progress Report and Phase 2 Authorization. City Manager. Summary request. Dave Duzendeg with West Urban Properties has prepared a progress report on the first phase of the city's pilot rental unit development agreement with his firm. He is requesting authorization to proceed with the second phase of the agreement, which includes 25 additional rental units. Staff recommendation to authorize West Urban Properties to proceed with construction of an additional 25 housing units on pre-approved city-owned lots pursuant to the pilot agreement.
Commissioner Ramsey saving it.
I move to authorize West Urban Properties to proceed with construction on additional 25 housing units on pre-approved city-owned lots pursuant to the pilot agreement.
Support.
Been moved by Commissioner Rinsma-Savinga, supported by Commissioner German, to authorize West Urban Properties to proceed with construction of an additional 25 housing units on pre-approved city-owned lots pursuant to the pilot agreement. As with the prior topic, we had long deliberation and a in-depth presentation by Mr. Duzendang. Are there any additional questions or observations from the commission? Commissioner German.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And this is for Mr. Duzendine. Thank you for being here tonight. Have you identified the locations of properties, the 25 properties that you want to build on? Have they been identified?
Not individual addresses. They're just in Nelson. They're going to be in the Nelson neighborhood. That was the original thought, was to build out Nelson neighborhood first, and then go on to McLaughlin and on to Marquette and wherever else that the city wanted me to go to from Nelson. So they'll be primarily in Nelson until the last ones are
So
built.
we got 25 lots in Nelson neighborhood that possibly will be identified soon. And
Yes. For
construction
this
will
first
proceed.
go around, we're going to do 10 to maybe 15 total foundations that we need to get in before the frost, so that we can carry it through the winter. And then we'll do the rest of the remaining ones in the spring and put those in the spring, and then continue those on for the rest of 2022.
And these are all single family homes?
Yes.
Okay, no duplexes or anything like that, just single family
Nope,
homes.
all
Okay.
single family homes, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-stall garages. And typically, I know the city refers 2 stories. So that's the designs that we have, is all 2 stories.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just like you outlined last night. Commissioner Ramsey.
Yes, I was not here last night, unfortunately. I'm so sorry that I missed your presentation, Dave, but it's good to see you again. And I have but one question.
You as well.
Of the new build that you've already put into our community, and thank you very much for that work, how many of those are rented?
As of right now, the ones that are standing, all but one are rented. And if the commission is okay to give them a little bit of an update.
No, that's
is
literally
that
my
enough?
only
Okay.
question. Is I just wanted to know how many of the ones that you built were being occupied, because that speaks to need.
Yeah, and all of them, all of the ones that are occupied, actually, they were leased before we even finished for certificate of occupancy. We took reservation agreements on every one of them.
I'm in the wrong business. All there is to it.
I've said that many times myself. So.
Thank you again, Dave.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Anything from the commission here? Commissioner Johnson?
Thank you. And thank you again for being here tonight, and as well as your ongoing investments in our city. So I just wanted to follow up from last night, that just to confirm, you and staff are going to be discussing and proceeding as to what to do with the properties on Webster, whether they should be part of this agreement or not part of this agreement, because there was a little bit of
Absolutely
confusion or misunderstanding about the responsibilities according to their inclusion or exclusion from the agreement. So that's going to be happening.
Absolutely. It's been a year since I've had a chance to review that document, so I'm not saying it's not in there, but absolutely, I'd love to sit down and hash that out, and pretty easy to get along with it on.
Commissioner Johnson, I think we do have some information here from the deputy manager.
So if you look at the Exhibit A that has the addresses that were included, I think probably the reason that people are not seeing it is the very last one, 1251 8th Street, that's Webster.
Mm-hmm.
So that whole property got split into many lots, but originally it was addressed at 1251 8th Street. So it's part of the agreement.
Mm-hmm. So our staff's position is part of the agreement, and so all of the aspects of this development agreement hold for those properties. So in which case, if there's concern, because it sounded like there's some concern from staff and the property owner as well last night, is the implications of that if they were to be sold. You know, anyone exercises their right to purchase, what that could mean for the surrounding property owners. So I believe there was a request from one of those adjoining property owners to have some kind of protection built into the deed. Is that something that, I guess, it's not a conversation right now.
Sure.
But I heard some, concerns about implications last night from the developer as well as the city. So that's something to be worked out in that regard to put the neighbors' minds at ease about the implications of these being sold. When we have an agreement, I just want us to honor the agreement and all the rights and privileges therein for the tenants. And
Absolutely.
so your property manager now understands that these homes can be sold right off the bat, and part of the lease for any of the tenants, they have that 60-day option to give notice, a 6-day written notice to purchase. Like that's, I don't know if you've communicated that or you're going to make sure they understand that, and
yeah, absolutely.
And make sure that's built into because I understood when we approved this development agreement that was going to be part of the lease. Like they would know in their lease there'd be some kind of clause saying you have a 60-day written notice, you have the option to purchase this based upon X, Y, and Z.
Sure, and I'll review the actual lease to confirm if it is or is not in there, and we can bring that actually to the meeting that we're discussing, and even from the beginning, now that it's built, Mary Gowan had brought up a very good point about if we do sell it to someone, and we've got, for instance, we'll use the berm as the example, and they decide to bulldoze that down. Now we've taken away from the appearance of that whole block. Now anybody can do whatever they want. They can put fences up, where with right now we control it. So if in the agreement it is in there, just like we think it may be, we can amend that based on a comment and discuss that further about how do we want that block to look going out of town, and the one coming right next to it off from Seaway coming into town. That may, none of us have thought that far in advance when we were doing the development agreement or the pilot agreement. But now that we're here and we have the dwelling standing and we have all the nice lawns in and all the landscaping in and the trees in, somebody could come in there and say, hey, we just don't like these trees. Let's tear out all 4 of these trees and throw whatever we want in there, and now it doesn't match. So you brought up a very valid point last evening that I think it does deserve a discussion to talk further about that specific block. Mm-hmm. Not all the rest of them, but that specific block. I would think that it definitely deserves a discussion to talk about how it's going to look for the city.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I'm not opposed to it at all, Commissioner Johnson, not at all. Nothing. But it's definitely a discussion now that it's standing, what we're looking at and how do we want it to to perceive going
the berm
forward.
Looks nice too. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. And it serves
a special situation. It becomes a special situation.
It really is. And we don't have to bring up, but there's several residents around there that would probably want to be in that same meeting as well, but we won't go that far. But yeah, definitely I'm open for the discussion on that, and I'm sure that between us two parties, we can work it out what's best for the city.
Very good.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to, like I said last night, just make sure that the
Valid point, very valid.
pathways to homeownership are being honored within this agreement and made available to.
Yep.
And
So
thank you to the deputy manager for having that clarification made. And thank you, Dave. Anything additional for Mr. Duzendang before we go to vote? Thank you, David.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Hood,
Yes.
Commissioner Ramsey,
Yes.
Commissioner German,
Yes.
Commissioner Pacifica,
Yes.
Commissioner Emery,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Mayor Gallagher.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Commissioners, thank you,
Thank
Dave.
you very much.
Looking forward to seeing more holes in the ground.
Absolutely.
At this time, do any of the commission members have anything to bring before the body before we go to public comment? At this time, then members of the public are, oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Ramsey, with the man with the red pen.
Yeah, that's okay. Hi. I just wanted to remind staff that I asked for, and it may have fallen off because it was at the very end of the meeting, an update on the watermark and their construction and build out. So if we can make that happen for our next commission, that would be great. If you're, I don't want to put anyone on the spot. If there are things you're going to share that would be great, then I would rather you share all the great things.
Please feel free to join us, Mr. Ekholm.
Thank you. Yeah, we're prepared to give that update. And I apologize, I should have added it to the agenda. But,
That's okay.
So, long story short, as you know, the commission approved a development agreement between the longstanding owner of the facility and the city. That agreement has not been executed because the counsel for that, the owner has basically said that they're not prepared to execute it. Upon investigation, staff discovered that the current owner has lenders that have position on the building, and they have entered foreclosure proceedings against the owner. Those have been filed here in Michigan Circuit Court, and I think there's also a civil case in New York as well, but I can't find it, so that's where we're at. So because of that, we have aggressively pursued enforcement on the building in basically three different fashions. One, we're going after a dangerous building, which allows us to get it into court and get liens placed on property. Then we're going for property maintenance code, so any sort of debris coming off the building, any sorts of not maintaining vegetation, and then also the general blight ordinance, which is a local municipal civil infraction. So we're doing all of those things. I am actively working with a local investor who is interested in acquiring the property. The challenge we're running into, and this is all in the, this is in public record in the filing. So, and I believe I did send that. But long story short, it's probably not going to appraise as a facility for any more than several $1 million, and the current owner owes the private lenders in excess between $8 and $10 million. So that's challenging. I anticipate that over the course of the next 12 to 18 months, the current owner is most likely to lose the property. Ideally, we would like a local owner to acquire it rather than another New York-based investor group who may or may not do anything with it. So that's kind of the situation we're in. Again, we are actively working with a very interested local party, but they're pragmatic and realistic about the building's value, and I don't anticipate they're going to offer over market, and I don't know that the lenders who are foreclosing on the owner will allow them to take that price. So that's where we're at.
Great. Well, you know what, Director Ekholm, I want to thank you for sharing that tonight, because we as a bench made a promise to our residents and the neighbors of that building, saying that we would hold them accountable, because their biggest concern was that the current owner had said and promised and did and would, and there was nothing. And so thank you to staff for really keeping up on that and trying to hold his feet to the fire, because our feet get held to the fire in the street, which is not as nice as it is in this room. And so anytime that we have updates on that, I would love to just have it be an agenda item that you can pop on anytime and say, hey, this is where we are, just so that our neighbors know that we still have their best interest at heart, and we are trying.
Thank you. That local investor is actually flying out there to meet with the current owner tomorrow. So I anticipate within the next couple weeks I'll know more about their intention or the ability to reach some sort of arrangement. Again, I don't believe that the owner any longer has the authority to discharge the building. I don't know that. I'm looking at our attorney, but it's hard to say because there's a current foreclosure proceeding against it. So, I'm assuming that lender would have to agree to the sale. But,
So in the interim, as you say, we can
we are
hopefully be as aggressive
Yep.
as possible on that. Because having seen August and then September come and go and no movement, I have no appetite to hear another excuse that the dog ate my homework. And so I hope we can be as aggressive as we legally can be, because it's, frankly, once again, we're left with a untenable situation with broken promises. Smack dab in the middle of a neighborhood that's been more than patient and accommodating. So
I would agree. The term I've been using a lot, with concerned citizens and other commercial owners in that area is like concerning us as staff. The current owners just run out of runway with us. We've tried everything at this point. Preceding my tenure here with the city, we've tried a lot of things. We've taken big swings at it since I've been here, and the city is, as evidenced by the commission, agreeing to that development agreement and even accommodating a rezoning. The city's been willing to try to make a productive deal there, and we're just not getting any traction. I would like to clarify that the local operator, on behalf of the owner, has been in good faith and been transparent with us the entire time. So I do want to clarify that. The operators of the Watermark 920 Event Center, and then who also manage the condo association and the coffee factory, they've been fantastic. The problem is they're not decision makers. So,
Right.
I just want to make sure that the folks watching at home understand the difference. So.
correct. Yeah, great point. Great point. Anything else for Mr. Ekholm as we head on there on this topic, Commissioner Johnson?
Yeah, thank you, sir. And thank you, Ekholm, for that update. So happy to hear that as part of that, our enforcement, we're stepping up enforcement, that it includes maintenance and grounds. Because one thing that I'd been hearing from neighbors is,
We're those neighbors.
yeah, we are those neighbors, and I'm sure you get an earful just as much as I do from our neighbors.
I am too, for 4 more days.
about the weeds and the overgrown.
We got lots of complaints.
Yeah. And so I'm happy to hear that we are, because they had been told previously, well, we got to be careful. We don't want to scare away the developers or whatnot. But no, we need to be ensuring that they're following our ordinance just as much as we enforce on our residents. But one thing, and I'm happy to see that that's been better recently. But one thing that I also have heard is the property right across the street, next to our marina.
Yeah, we've.
Funny you should bring that up.
We've issued on that as well. And actually, driving home last night, the mayor texted me after the work session that property needs some work as well. And so yeah, we followed up with the owner. I think the challenge they're running into, and they need to be held accountable just like everybody else. But the challenge they're running into is they've got some fill sand that's part of the construction material, and that's really overgrown. So on a couple different occasions, they've had their property maintenance contractor, I presume, come through and clean it up, but they're not getting everything. So actually, the manager and I had a meeting with them several weeks ago, and their plan, because they're just about to a substantial completion on their second spec, and then they're going to be working on their third, fourth, and fifth, is to actually, we're bringing up berms twice tonight, because their plan is to install a berm right up to the railroad easement and then landscape all that. My understanding is that was supposed to have started by now, so I left a message today after the mayor texted me last night to follow up and see where they're at with that. So yeah, we've gotten several complaints on that property as well, and we are holding them accountable. Director Spittler in Safe Built has been very responsive. So.
Awesome. Okay. So we might be seeing them or one of our crews, our subcontractors, go out there and clean that up. I realize the berm's one thing, but there's other property that could be properly maintained.
Yep. So I think they're probably towards the end of their grace period there, and then we would call out our contractor, and it would get assessed to them. Yep.
Okay.
Like we had on the Watermark.
Yep. Yeah, like we have on the wall. And actually, I should note again, just to clarify, that the local operators of the watermark have told us, been transparent in good faith. They were having issues with their landscape contractor having a labor shortage, and so they were having trouble keeping up with their schedule. And they actually requested that we come to it and put it on there and assess fees to them one time throughout the summer, and then they did it the rest of the time. So there have been challenges on that part, but not for lack of trying by that local operator.
Are we, in terms of our overall enforcement, because we've heard, I think there's an appetite for us to be enforcing as much as, is legally permissible. Are we enforcing on the vacant building ordinance with regard to the old empty factories that we see crumbling?
The unoccupied portions of that site, I actually don't know, and that's a good thing to bring up, so I will find out and email the commission. So,
Okay.
yep.
Yeah.
I don't know if they have vacant building fees accrued from previous years or not.
It's my
That's
understanding in
something.
the past that had not been enforced, and I think they file under storage. I don't know, but if
We can get that clarified.
Yeah, if there's a loophole there, then I think we're probably ready to close it. Like just
Yeah,
because,
close that
because
loophole.
we're, as I said, they're out of runway with
because
me.
I've
I'm
also
just
heard an earful about someone, another person being charged. And it's like, why am I being charged this? I want to develop, I want to do this, that, and then others, are not. And so,
yep.
yeah, you can take a look at that and close that loophole.
Yeah, we definitely want to value equitable enforcement, so I'll follow up and see. I just honestly, in all candor, I have not checked.
Okay.
Very
Very
appreciate your efforts. Thank you for your work.
All right. Commissioner Ramsey?
Yep, just to close it out, I'm not trying to drone on. Thank you for bringing up the fact that the team that's here, that is the feet on the street at the Watermark and the event center and the coffee factory, are doing all that they can, because we don't want any of our residents to take up issue with them.
No,
They're
I
all
think
neighbors, and Sarah and that team tries very hard.
it is.
Yeah,
That's the
you for
most
bringing that.
excellent point because, I mean, I don't want to say how some of them have reflected their own disconcertion. So, okay.
Thank you, Director Echo.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Is there anything else, commissioners? If not, we'd like to open up the public comment at this time. Any member of the public is welcome to come forward. 3 minutes of comment. We just ask for your name, your address. We don't engage in debate or deliberation at this point, but for any particular questions, we can certainly put the appropriate staff member in touch with you on your question or your concern. Anyone wish to come forward? If not, Vice Mayor?
Mayor, I do have one that was that was called into us,
Oh.
a recording
Oh, please.
that I was
Okay.
going
We
to
do have a comment.
attempt to play. So give me a second here.
Hello, everyone. I am Anna L. Eldon Brady of 1336 Spring Street. My concern today is actually related to the method by which I'm addressing you. I'm worried about accessibility. At one point, I was able to keep up on goings-on in the city, whether it was my neighborhood concerns or government or policy changes. I had ways to find things out and places I could connect in order to learn what was going on. But as the world shut down, inching up on 2 years ago, I lost a lot of these contacts, at least initially. You see, I'm disabled, and I've been disabled for over 30 years. And I'm speaking to you remotely tonight because there is no other way I can both meet the needs of my disability and be able to participate in government other than to do so remotely. This is not my ideal. The thing is, we had a better system not long ago. When the world turned to virtual and remote access, the things that disability justice advocates had been asking for years were suddenly possible. And I only say possible in that way because we knew it wasn't out of reach all along. But when it became non-disabled people who needed increased accessibility supports, they could be made. I'd hoped we would have learned from this and continued to broaden the ability for all people to participate in this world, but I'm sadly seeing more and more that no, we haven't. While I'm grateful to be able to address you in this way, well, I can't respond to what happens in the meeting. I can't network. None of you can come up to me right after to address this. I'm feeling very disconnected and cut off. There are things coming down the line that will directly impact my neighborhood, and I can't ask questions on Facebook. I can't even message for information on Facebook on who to ask for more details on plans or projects. Both comments and messages have been disabled. I feel as though randomly emailing people in the city government in hopes of connecting to the right person is both disrespecting the time of others when I get it wrong and is embarrassing to myself. And I can't simply come into a meeting to get information either. This is hard. And I know it's not convenient to adapt, and I know exclusion isn't necessarily intentional. It isn't likely intentional. But that's the thing about isms, like ableism. You don't really see them until you're on the receiving end of them, or if you're looking for them. So to that end, I'd like you to consider something. How can you enfold digital access into physical access to create a hybrid system that allows more of us to be in this room together? I know it's possible. And I hope we can learn from what we've all been through, because what was normal before was harmful to many. And now that we know better, please, let's do better. We can. I know it. There just has to be a will for it. Thank you.
Everyone's consideration. Is there anyone else that would like to make comment at this time? Vice Mayor.